Ever feel like you're just drowning in information? You want to understand something complex, but you just get swamped.
Yeah, it's a real thing.
Yeah.
Trying to stay informed without spending days reading.
Exactly. So that's what we do here on the deep dive. Think of us as your shortcut. We dig through the material, pull out the key insights, those aha moments, and we respect your time.
And today we're diving into the world of psychotherapy.
We are. Our guide is this really fascinating book, An Expression of the Heart by Li Qinyun.
Li Qinyun, she's got quite the background. Graduated psychology from Beijing University, then went on to study more in the U.S.
Right, and now she's an independent psychotherapist, and she leans pretty heavily towards the psychoanalytic school.
Psychoanalytic, yeah.
Yeah.
Founded by Freud, of course. The basic idea, and it's a powerful one, is that our issues now, a lot of them stem from things back in childhood.
Unaddressed stuff, like traumas or desires we push down, unconscious conflicts.
Exactly. To understand now, you've got to look back then.
And Li Qinyun's book, it isn't just theory, is it? It's like 31 essays where she's really open about her own journey.
Very transparent. Her experiences, her reflections. It reads almost like you're getting a long therapy session yourself. It's quite personal.
She puts it nicely in the book, says psychoanalysis is about reliving consciously and completely those fragments or stages of life that were not well lived.
Making them really part of your experience. Owning them.
So today, we're going to tackle this through like 4 main questions. We'll unpack what Li Qinyun thinks makes therapy actually work.
And how language connects to our deepest feelings.
Why childhood keeps popping up all the time.
And dreams. Why dreams matter too.
Okay, let's get into it. So first up, this core idea. Psychotherapy is really all about the relationship. Like Qinyun starts with her own experience, right? As a patient.
Yeah, she talks about finding her therapist, Dr. K, describes him as an ethnic male with a doctorate in clinical psychoanalysis.
And she mentions being a bit reluctant at first, seeing a non-Chinese male therapist.
She did. Maybe looking for someone more similar culturally. But she notes his voice was very soothing. Helped ease her anxiety, even in that first meeting.
Shows how quickly that therapeutic space can start being built.
And then there's the classic psychoanalytic technique, the couch.
Right, lying down. Supposed to help you relax, free associate, let your thoughts just flow.
But for her, in a stranger's office, lying down actually made it harder to relax initially.
That's interesting.
Yeah, but she realized, even that journey from feeling awkward to feeling relaxed, that was part of the process too.
It wasn't instant comfort, it took work.
And consistent work.
Yeah.
She saw Dr. K weekly, but she points out how intense therapy can be by mentioning his own experience.
Oh yeah, what was that?
He apparently went through 2.5 years of really high-frequency therapy himself. And he described it like, under that intensity, the unconscious defense system could only drop its armor.
Wow. And meet the analyst naked on a spiritual level. That's quite an image.
It is. It speaks to the depth of vulnerability involved.
And Dr. K helped create the space for that vulnerability. That seems key. An unconditional space.
Absolutely crucial. She felt she could just throw everything at him. Her anxieties about writing, feeling stuck academically, confusion about her internship.
Just unload it all.
And his response was pivotal. He told her, the only place in the world where you can speak without consequence is here.
That's powerful. Freedom to just be and speak.
And in that space, his skills really came through, like interpretation. She gives an example.
Oh, yeah.
She described herself as having empty eyes. And Dr. K immediately saw that as representing a lack of communication channels, of emotional outlets for her.
And that clipped for her.
Deeply. It gave her a new way to understand herself.
But it wasn't just clever interpretations, was it? It was also about empathy.
Profound empathy, she says. She asked him once how he judged how severe her childhood trauma was.
And what did he say?
He said something like, it depends on your relationship with the world, as reflected in our conversation. She couldn't recall the exact words later.
But she remembered the feeling.
Exactly. She remembered his voice slowing down, getting softer, like he was really feeling her past with her.
She writes, no technique is as good as real empathy.
Yeah. She felt this sincere resonance from him, someone totally unrelated to her. And she calls that true communication, like freedom, one of the most worthwhile things.
So after all this intensity, this connection, what was the big takeaway for her? The core insight?
She realized she was treating Dr. K like a teacher, which was a pattern for her, seeking older mentors.
Ah, okay.
And that led to this big revelation. Therapy isn't mainly about solving problems. Fundamentally, it's about re-experiencing a relationship.
Okay, that's a key distinction. Not the answers, but the interaction.
Right. It echoes Irvin Yalom, the existential psychotherapist. He said the real therapeutic juice is in the client-therapist relationship itself.
The therapist creates this emotional holding space.
Where old feelings from childhood, anger, fear, sadness, stuff that got pushed down,
Can finally come out.
yeah, be felt, validated, explored, and eventually released. That's where the healing happens.
It sounds like finding a new parent in a way. She mentions that. Trust, support.
It has those qualities, definitely, like finding a new father or mother. But she also says it's unnatural.
How so?
Well, it's assumed it's temporary, like a playhouse game, she calls it. You know the analyst is separate, but emotionally, you project your old relationship patterns onto them.
That projection thing, Dr. K had something interesting to say about that, didn't he? About whether it's guaranteed to happen?
He did. She asked him how he could be sure clients would project their early stuff onto him.
Okay.
He just said, it's a pattern. People will inevitably respond in their most familiar ways. It's like the therapy room becomes a mirror for your inner world.
Reflecting things you might not even be aware of. Those childhood feelings, repressions.
Exactly. Things maybe you can't even put into words easily.
Which brings up a question. Can people fake it in therapy? Pretend.
Dr. K thought faking is hard to keep up. And even why someone might try to fake it, that tells you something too.
The motivation itself is revealing.
Right. He suggested good therapy is ultimately about love, helping people who haven't felt loved or haven't been able to love rediscover that feeling.
And for Li Qinyun, that feeling being loved, being able to love, that's feeling truly alive. Okay, so if the relationship's the core, how do you build it? It's through language, right? Constant communication.
Yeah, the goal, she says, is for the client's language to get closer and closer to their actual emotions. Every word becomes an expression of the heart.
But that's not always straightforward. She talks about finding some clients particularly challenging.
Two types. First, the minimalist.
The minimalist.
Someone who just sits there, answers briefly, only when asked, no details. How are you? Anxious? About what? Job interview? Describe it. Can't. Just nervous.
Ugh, that sounds difficult. The conversation just dies.
Totally. She says it relies on her racking her brain, often getting nowhere.
And the second type.
The reporter. These people can talk, maybe even show emotion, but then they just stop.
Yeah.
That's all that happened. Nothing else to say.
But like they're just filing a report, seeing the therapist as a system administrator.
Exactly. Not as someone to relate to.
And what connects these two types?
The common thread, she observes, is that their language is distant from their feelings. They're disconnected.
Disconnected from their emotions. And she gives that really simple, powerful example.
Mom, I love you. Yeah. Her little 4-year-old daughter says it easily.
But she almost never hears clients say it so clearly about their own parents.
Right. And it's not that they don't feel love. Of course they do.
No, it's more complicated. She gives examples. The woman whose absent father affected her love life, but she couldn't talk about him.
Or the angry young woman complaining about her controlling mother.
But then bursts into tears at the thought of creating distance, saying, I can't, I don't want to hurt her.
Yeah, so what's going on there? It seems parents, the people closest to us, can be the hardest to be truly honest with emotionally.
Especially if parenting wasn't ideal. If it was authoritarian, cold, maybe abusive.
Then the child gets hurt. And the natural response to hurt is anger.
But you can't be angry at mom or dad, especially if you love them intensely.
Exactly. That love can become so powerful it suppresses the anger. But the anger doesn't just vanish. It builds up this internal conflict, love versus rage.
And saying, I can't keep distance, I don't want to hurt mom, you end up hurting yourself instead.
Precisely. As that conflict grows, you kind of distance yourself from it, maybe distort it, until you just can't say the complex truth anymore.
Like, Mom, I love you, and sometimes I hate you, but I have to only love you because you're Mom. It's too much.
So we repress. We choose love, deny the anger. Or maybe choose anger, deny the love. Either way.
You get cut off from your inner world. Language gets disconnected from emotion.
Yeah. And Li Qinyun says the essential task, then, is learning to accept and reconcile those contradictory feelings. It's what she tries to help her own kids do, accept her flaws, let them love her, and sometimes dislike or even hate her.
And that's the work she does with clients, too, helping them bridge that gap.
Which brings us back to childhood. You know, the common complaint about therapy, it's always about childhood.
Right. Why do therapists keep going back there?
Well, we generally accept early experiences shape us, but how it works isn't always obvious. Qinyun shares this really illuminating personal story.
Oh, yeah. What happened?
She was getting really irritated by strangers, sending her DMs, asking for free psychological help. She felt angry, but also annoyed at herself for getting so worked up over something seemingly small.
Mm-hmm. Like, why such a strong reaction?
Her own therapist tackled in two ways. First, practically, even humorously. Suggested she could just reply, "Happy to help, my fee is $200 an hour."
Huh. Did she do it?
She laughed, realized she didn't quite have that knack for boundary-setting humor, but then the therapist dug deeper, psychologically.
Okay.
He mentioned understanding Eastern culture, how maybe this boundary blurring comes from old agrarian societies, neighbors sharing everything.
And that sparked something for her.
Immediately. A vivid memory. Her childhood home. They had one of the first color TVs in the area imported.
Oh.
And neighbors would come over every night to watch, staying late, because, it was rare.
Right. And her therapist connected that.
He asked if those late nights delayed her sleep, just like the recent DMs were maybe interrupting her.
Ah, the connection.
And she remembered being 5 years old, feeling annoyed, angry, pained by the noise and late nights, but totally unable to say anything. Her parents were being hospitable hosts.
So she just had to endure it, powerless.
She writes, "Perhaps I went to sleep filled with deep helplessness and powerlessness."
Wow. So the irritation today wasn't just about the DMs, it was echoing that childhood helplessness.
Exactly. She calls it a magical experience, realizing that as adults, we may still be living with residual helplessness and powerlessness from our childhood.
As kids, we're stuck, we just have to wait to grow up. But as adults, we forget those old feelings are still there, driving our reactions sometimes.
And that's why we revisit childhood, Li Qinyun argues, talking about the past, bravely. It's a form of self-love.
Loving that helpless kid part of you while also affirming your adult strength now.
Yeah. And she recalls a teacher from her training saying something profound. When you listen to anyone's story, remember, there is a child's soul at work.
Forget the labels for a moment. Depression, anxiety.
Focus on what is that inner child crying out for? What happened to them? It shifts the focus from diagnosis to the deep human experience.
Okay, so beyond childhood, another big area in therapy is dreams. Why talk about dreams so much?
Well, to get into dreams, you kind of have to talk about Freud again, founder psychoanalysis, talking therapy.
Right, and he stressed how therapy talk is different from normal chat.
Very different. In therapy, you're basically required to say whatever pops into your head. Free association. Doesn't matter if it seems random or meaningless.
Because those uncensored thoughts, the free associations, they reveal more than our carefully chosen words.
Often, yes. Our usual filters, social norms, morality, they shape what we say. Free association tries to bypass that.
That's why therapists might use silence sometimes and then ask, what were you thinking just then, to get that flow going?
Exactly. It taps the unconscious. And dreams, Freud famously said, are another shortcut to the unconscious.
He wrote a whole book, The Interpretation of Dreams, with complex ideas like dream work.
But Li Qinyun focuses more on concrete examples. How looking at a dream helped in therapy. She tells a story about a long-term client. Why?
Okay, what was Y's dream?
She was with Li Qinyun in a room. Li Qinyun gets an interview notification, a reporter comes in, and Y just sits there silently, listening to Li Qinyun being interviewed.
Interesting scenario. How did Li Qinyun understand why before this dream?
She saw Y as someone who wanted intimacy but was also really afraid of it, which kept their therapy relationship a bit shallow.
And the dream, what did it reveal?
Li Qinyun broke it down. Y being silent, just listening, maybe suggesting a power imbalance or some dissatisfaction.
But she stayed.
Right. Staying suggested she actually did want a deeper connection. And the fact that someone else was interviewing Li Qinyun, not Y herself.
What did that suggest?
Maybe Y wanted to understand Li Qinyun better, but was hiding how intense that desire for connection was. Perhaps scared of the pain of eventually separating, since Y was a student and would leave.
So the dream hinted that underneath Y's defenses, a real attachment had formed.
Exactly. And then something fascinating happened to Li Qinyun while they were discussing Y's dream. She had a kind of daydream herself. She pictured her own daughter on her lap after waking up or feeding, just gently stroking her cheek.
A maternal feeling.
Yes. It showed her the connection wasn't just one way. Y was attached to her, and she felt a strong, almost maternal bond towards Y. The relationship was deeper and bidirectional.
Wow. That's quite a realization for the therapist, too.
It really was. And after exploring this dream in her daydream, Their therapy shifted. They started talking about attachment, about separation.
And why could open up more?
Li Qinyun says why was finally able to reduce some of her reservations, allowing me to better experience her unspeakable loneliness and pain as a child raised in an emotional desert.
So the dream really unlocked something crucial.
It seems so. Now, dream interpretation is controversial, of course,
Sure.
but Li Qinyun's point is broader. Our inner world is vast, deep, full of emotional logic we often can't easily grasp or put into words. Much of it is unconscious.
And dreams are just one way, one pathway to explore that inner landscape.
She admires Freud's dedication, analyzing hundreds of dreams, believing self-exploration is just endless.
Our unconscious or soul. She uses that beautiful image, like the deepest, deepest sea, and dreams are its ceaseless waves.
Always something stirring beneath the surface.
So wrapping up this psychoanalytic approach, it really sounds like an adventure in truth, as Li Qinyun puts it.
Yeah, it's not promising an easy life, but maybe the courage to face life's difficulties.
When we dare to talk about that silent child inside, or unpack those confusing dreams, those lost parts of ourselves can come back.
It's like excavating your own soul's truth. It involves mourning the past, yes, but also finding your vitality again. Often our deepest wounds hold the key to our own healing.
And maybe that's the paradox here, the really moving part. When you're brave enough to lay out all your broken pieces in front of someone else, you somehow start putting yourself back together, becoming more whole.
Yeah, like the ocean washing over rocks again and again, revealing their true shape over time. Maybe we need that gentle, persistent attention, that therapeutic relationship to finally see the outline of our own souls.
And find the expression of our hearts.